Welcome to Construction Genius. And today, it is a great pleasure to have back on the show Nick Espinoza. And Nick is an expert in cybersecurity. Check out episode 210 for his insights into how to protect your company from hackers. Today, we're going to be talking about the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And don't click off the podcast because this impacts you whether you realize it or not. It is a certification that the Department of Defense is going to be requiring for contractors and subcontractors. And you might say, well, Eric, I don't work with the DoD. But that certification and that level of security protection in the cyber world is going to be trickling out throughout all of the federal government down to the state and local levels. So if you do any work in those areas at all, you're going to need that CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification at some point. And that's why you should listen to today's episode. In addition, Nick and I explore the things that you should be looking for when you are hiring an outside expert to help you with your cybersecurity, and when you should get an internal person to handle cybersecurity as your company grows. So you're going to get three things today. Number one, all about the CMMC. Number two, how to pick an outside vendor to help you with your cybersecurity. And number three, when to get an internal person handling cybersecurity in your construction company. So it's going to be practical. It's going to be straightforward. And the great thing about Nick is he's very articulate, to the point, and he knows what he's talking about. So enjoy my conversation with Nick. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Nick, welcome back to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me again. Good to be here.
You joined the select group of second-time visitors. There's another group of three-time visitors. We've never had a fourth-time visitor yet, but thank you so much for coming back on. I know you're very busy.
My pleasure. My question is, if I hit 5 times, do I get a jacket? Is there some kind of jacket that I get?
Oh, man. You know what? It's funny. I have an 8-year-old, and he's a budding entrepreneur, and he wanted to start a sweater printing business. And so I said, well, why don't we start a Construction Genius store where we take the logo and do all the sweaters and the hats? And he was like, yeah, let's do the Construction Genius store. So we will definitely make that happen for you, Nick.
No worries. I appreciate it. Might get stuck on the back of my wall.
There you go. Beautiful. So I'm bringing you back on because you're an expert in cybersecurity. It's a massive issue. I know last time we talked, I've got one of my clients in my mind right now, huge construction company who took a massive hit like a year or two ago, having to deal with cybersecurity. I'm here to dive into your expertise in terms of the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification.
Yes.
That's a mouthful, but
it is.
Please tell the audience what that is.
Yes. So the CMMC, or Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, as you said, the mouthful, is essentially coming out of the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense. We've had a huge push just overarchingly in the entire world of cybersecurity in the last 5 to 6 years for vendor supply management, but basically in securing your supply chain. Because when you go through all these data breaches, and every week there's some kind of massive data breach, I do literally a breaches of the week video every Sunday, and it keeps getting longer. Half of those or more are, we didn't get breached, but we outsourced some aspect of our business, and now they got breached and we have to declare. Well, the Department of Defense is no different. They have a defense industrial base, which is 300,000 plus corporations, private corporations, that essentially are catering to whatever the Department of Defense needs. They need a warplane built, they're going to get it. They need ammunition, somebody's going to get that, right? Now you've got, on top of that, construction. You need the Marine barracks built, you need landing strips for your Air Force, et cetera, et cetera. God knows what the Space Force needs. And so the Department of Defense came out and basically said, we are sick and tired of having China and Russia and all of our basically opponents eat our technological lunch every day. The DoD is not really getting hacked, but the defense industrial base is getting hacked because, well, they've always had a standard to say, hey, are you actually doing security? Everybody could say, sure, yeah, we're doing it, we're fine. And then everybody gets hacked. And so now they said no more. And so back in 2020, they released the original CMMC 1.0, which was an utter hot mess, but it basically got it down the road. And it basically signaled to the entire defense industrial base, the DoD is no longer playing around. that you are going to have to get a third-party certification for most cases if you want to handle what is called CUI, or controlled unclassified information. And so that would be like the schematics to the Marine barracks. So if you're that pipe fitter, you're that electrician, you're an AEC or MEP, or take your construction acronym pick, and you're working on that Marine barracks, now you're handling CUI. Now you're handling something that they don't want another intelligence agency to understand where to put the cameras and the microphones. And so they are forcing this down on the entire defense industrial base. And by virtue of that, this is 2023. Now we are 3 years into this. This is when a lot of this is really starting to come alive, and it's going to be a huge issue. And so if you're now just learning about this here on this podcast, you are officially behind. You really are.
Okay, so some more details then. Just break down very simply. Give it to me because I'm a simple guy. Give me the 5th grade level or the 10th grade level of what this is all about.
Well, let's say Johnny owns a data center. No, I'm kidding.
Yep.
No, okay. And he's got 5 servers in that data center. No. Essentially what this is you're working in the defense industrial base for the Department of Defense. You might not be a prime contractor. You may never go to the DoD directly, but that large GC that has the contract to build the Marine barracks is flowing down work to basically the subcontractors, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, take your pick.
Yep.
And by virtue of that, everybody that handles that information essentially needs to have a certification or at least an attestation or a waiver to work on that job. If you do not have any one of those things, by law, you cannot work on that job, which means you could potentially, if you're a sub, lose most favored status with your GC because your competitor can do it because they have the certification. This is a huge thing that a lot of construction corporations just have no idea how incredibly important this is going to be as it comes to fruition. And so by virtue of that, it's a standard process for operating now as we are looking at the Department of Defense. And eventually this is going to the entire federal government, and then it's being pushed to state and local as well. And so by virtue of that, even if you're not working with the DoD and you're like, you know what, I work with the local municipal dog catcher to build kennels, at some point, there's going to be a cybersecurity maturity certification that you're going to have to get. It may not be as stringent, but this is coming for everyone that works with any level of government. And that's the big thing to understand.
Okay, great. That makes it clearer for me that it's not just the DoD, but it's going to be everyone eventually. What are those 3 levels of the CMMC, the 2.0? Where are we at the moment with that?
Yeah, so CMMC, the original, as I mentioned, there was 1.0 when it first came out. That was 5 levels that you had to go to. And if you were basically that GC or that subcontractor, level 3 is where over 90% of defense industrial base is going to. But they streamlined that in 2.0. And so now there are 3 levels. The first level remains the same, just basic cyber hygiene, but that doesn't allow you to handle that controlled unclassified information. And so now 90% of the defense industrial base, aka the listeners here, are going to level 2. And level 2 is now considered that good cyber hygiene. Level 3 are for the big boys, like the Lockheeds, the space contractors, aerospace, that kind of thing. But if you're a GC, you're a sub, you're MEP, AEC, et cetera, level 2 is what you're targeting. And here we are. It's 110 security controls with policies, procedures, evidence, everything that is required. So it's going to be, for some, a heavy lift. For others, you might be halfway down the road or more, in which case, just finish those projects, secure yourself, get the paperwork in order, and you can start looking at getting a certification. But again, it takes time, money, energy, effort, all those things.
Okay, so let's say I'm a contractor. I know this is coming down the pipeline. I haven't done anything yet, or maybe it's the first time I'm hearing about it. Give us very quickly some first steps that I can take to get to at least that level 2.
Yes. So the first thing that you should do is really indicate to the federal government that you are interested in working with the defense industrial base and the federal government as well. So you can sign up for what is called the SPRS. This is the supplier portal, like risk system that the DoD has. And so you're supplying your cage codes from the US government to say, hey, I am contractor X, and I'm interested in going down this road. Then you do a self-score out of basically the 110 controls. Are you rocking it out? Are you not? And I will give you a caveat on that. Some of the early advice that was given to a lot of companies out there was just score yourself as 110, no matter how bad you are. You could be a 1, score yourself 110, and then put everything in what is called POAM mode, plan of action and milestones, meaning, we've got 90 controls to go, but we're going to get them done in the next year. Well, the government then went back and started looking at companies for fraud. They're not doing that. So be honest with that score. If you're really at 40 out of 110, you're at 40. If you're at 10, if you're at 109, you're at 109. But be honest with that. But what you're doing is you're signaling that you are going down that road. And then from there, I highly recommend getting an overview assessment based off of the CMMC standard or the NIST standard, NIST 800, which is what CMMC is based on. And so that will give you a roadmap to understand, okay, of the 110 things, here's the 80 things I've got to do. And we're going to prioritize the big rock things, get those done, and the little things will fall into place. No project like this should take more than 8 fiscal quarters or 2 years. That's beyond important because the technology is rapidly changing. But also understand that these rules, because they've been submitted, they're going to go online somewhere between late 2023 and early 2024. Right now was originally going to be May. That's being pushed back, which gives you some breathing room. But also understand if you're starting down this road right now, you're probably a year and a half behind your competitors. And there are plenty of construction companies out there that are already doing this and have started back in 2020 that are almost there or are there. And so this is a huge thing that we need to understand. We've got to get moving on this. It's beyond important.
And for the audience, just so you know, I know Nick's firing out a lot of different parts of information here. No, it's cool, Nick. We're going to put links in the show notes so that everything that we've discussed here, there'll be some links that you can click on and you can get more information so that you can spend some time after the show taking a look at the various pieces of information. Now, let's go back to this 110 security controls. So you talked about big rocks. What are the big rocks in those 110 security controls?
Sure. And I will start with where a lot of corporations or organizations fall down that we have seen historically. There are, of those overarching, if you're looking at the NIST framework, there are basically 22 categories at the high level. And those are the ones that have all the little controls underneath it. And so it usually starts with things like asset management. Do you know where all of your computers, your tablets, your IoT devices, your phones, et cetera, are? If you do not have a total control of your asset management and can prove it, then how do you know your stuff is protected? How do you know it's not being stolen? How do you know it's up to code? So we start with those kinds of things. We're also looking at identifying risk to the organization. Do you have a risk management strategy? Have you done a risk assessment to yourself? Like what happens if you get ransomware? What happens if a tornado hits? What happens if an employee decides to walk away with your prospects list and go to your competitor? These are things that we have to quantify as an organization and figure out ways. Do we accept this risk because there's nothing we can do about it? Is there something we can fix? Can we transfer it to a third party? I mean, these are things that we have to understand. And then there's other things like access control. Does everybody have a unique username and password on your network, or 20 guys in your shipping department all logging into the computer as shipping? And then they get ransomware, and now you got 20 guys pointing the finger at each other. These are things that we have to look at. On top of it, it's data security. Everybody thinks cybersecurity is your firewall and your antivirus and all that stuff, and it is. That's part of it, but that's data security. And then there's contingency planning. How are you handling a disaster? Do you have incident response? How are you maintaining your network? How are you maintaining your defensive stuff? There's a lot of different things that go into this, but if you're starting down this road, this is why we start with an assessment. Because if you just start plugging these holes, all you're doing is playing whack-a-mole, and you're just going to miss things by the time you get to the audit. And then you're going to have to be scrambling to make up that time or fix something that you should have fixed right out of the gate.
Hope you're enjoying the conversation today with Nick. Quick break to remind you about my book, Construction Genius. Effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. You may ask, Eric, where did you get that title? I got it from one of my clients. He and a number of his executives went through a training program with me, a leadership development program. And I asked for his feedback. And he said, Eric, you know what I like about your training? It's simple, it's effective, and it's no BS. So if that's the kind of information that appeals to you, go out and buy my book, get it for you, get it for the executives in your company, and read it together. And start a little book club where once a month you get together for 30 or 40 minutes and you say, okay, we read 3 or 4 chapters in the book. There's 12 chapters, so you can do it in about 3 months if you take 4 chapters a month. And just have a discussion. What are we going to do to use this information in our construction company right now? And if you do that over the 3 months, what you'll do is not only get a ton of great information, you'll share it with one another, you'll build team strength and cohesion, and it will have a massive positive impact on your construction company. So whether it's the paperback, the hardback, or the Audible, you can get it on Amazon. Click the link in the show notes, go purchase your copies, and I promise you, it will be a tremendous refreshment to you and your team. All right, let's get back to the conversation with Nick. And for the audience, again, what I'd like to do is refer you as well to episode 210 when Nick came on, and we got into a lot of detail in terms of specific strategies to protect your business from hacks, phishing, and fraud. And so you want to make sure that you check out 210 as well as this episode. Now, Nick, what I'd like to do is obviously you work with a lot of construction companies helping them with these types of issues. And I know that many of the contractors who are listening to this, they don't necessarily have their own in-house expert. They may have someone who's their head of IT or something like that, but they're not really a cybersecurity expert. And I know this may sound like a slightly self-serving question, but what I'd like you to do is give the audience some just brass tacks advice as to what they should be looking for in an outside vendor when they're selecting someone to help them with cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And so this is actually an excellent question and a very important point. And it's something that I talk about all the time. IT is not cybersecurity. I do not go to my podiatrist for brain surgery, and I'm not going to my neurosurgeon for footwork. And I like to both walk and think. We specialize just like anybody else. If you're a pipe fitter, do you know how to run electrical? Probably not. There's two different disciplines there. And so by virtue of that, understand the differences, but also understand the capabilities of outsourced IT or internal IT as well. There are a lot of things that we dovetail with that we go hand in hand. I love my IT people. I can set my watch to them. They keep the lights on. They keep the maintenance running, the infrastructure up. Cybersecurity is the shield that defends that. And so when you are looking at getting an MSP, let's say you're having to outsource, that's one of the things that we actually help organizations with. We just actually helped the labor union do that, find a new outsourced MSP, is understand that all of them are going to come with the same thing. We're going to be fast. We're going to be friendly. We're going to be responsive. If there's an issue, we'll be there yesterday, 5-alarm fire kind of thing. They're all going to give you those kinds of guarantees. They're all going to have those written into their contracts. What separates good from great or horrible from great is the products that they sell. That's your first stop. And so if you have mid-range products, or they are rather selling you mid-range products as opposed to enterprise level, let's say firewalls, which is a very easy example. And so you've got these very mid-range products out there like WatchGuard and SonicWall and Meraki and a whole bunch of others. And they're not selling you, or they don't have the ability to run things like Palo Alto Networks firewalls, which is the same firewall the DoD uses, for example. That's a huge gap, because it shows they're not investing the time and energy in training to move up to more advanced products. And that's something that we have to really understand. And so as I'm looking and as I'm vetting, and I'll give you the perfect example with that labor union, we were looking basically at 29 different MSPs or IT, outsourced IT in their area. And we whittled that down to 5 purely based on product. And then we have other criteria that we interview for. But another one that we also look at too is the certifications of the organization, not necessarily certifications of the individual. Do they have like a SOC 2 certification as a company? Do they have an ISO certification as a company? These are things that they should be moving towards. And even if they don't have it, if they're on that road, that's also a good sign as well. So for example, my company, we drink NIST 800-171. It's the same standard as the CMMC. And we've been doing that for like 20 years because I'm an old NIST guy. I come from that background. So by virtue of that, we can attest to that as a company. Can your MSP do that? And if they can't, that is another tell that maybe they're not handling your data. Maybe if you have to declare a data breach, it's not you getting breached, it's your IT company. And we just went through a rash of thousands of IT companies getting hit because of a low to mid-range product that got compromised by Russian hackers about 1.5 years ago. So you got to practice what you preach here. You really do.
Great. So obviously the types of products that your provider is selling and the certifications that the provider has. Now, help me in this way, because I'm not so much concerned about how much I'm supposed to pay, but what I'm concerned about is how I'm paying. So if I'm looking to really upgrade, should I be expecting a chunk up front and then ongoing payments, or what should be my expectation going in?
Most models right now are kind of the pay monthly as you go model, in the sense of you're going to sign up for Office 365, you're paying Microsoft month to month. You can buy a year up front. They prefer that. But a lot of those are ongoing payments. When you're looking at an outsourced third-party IT, odds are you're going to be paying them a flat rate per month for specific things. You're going to have monitoring agents on your computers to make sure your computers are up to date. It probably ties into your threat defense on the computer. So if we get a virus, it's going to alert them. Those are pretty standard things these days. And so you pay monthly for that. But when you're looking at things like enterprise level technology, if you're looking at endpoint detection, which is the agent that replaces antivirus on all your computers, usually those are month to month. But when you're looking at firewalls, you're usually buying the firewall outright, and then you're buying a license for anywhere from 1 to 3 years. And so in 3 years, you might have to go and renew that license or buy something new, depending on the model you have, those kinds of things. And so it's kind of hit or miss. But most outsourced IT run on the monthly recurring revenue model, meaning, okay, Eric, you've got 100 computers I need to secure. And so I've got 100 agents, 100 antivirus or EDR, 100 this. And so you're paying $4,000 a month just for that, plus our service package. So now you're up to $6,000 a month, and that covers everything. And some of them will say, okay, and it's more money for more service in terms of if we have to respond. Others will say it's a flat rate no matter what. We're taking the risk, and they usually build the risk dollars in. So, but yeah, usually you're going to have monthly recurring charges, and you might have some that you have to renew annually or, every few years.
Okay. So now, what are some red flags that I need to look for in terms of, let's say I've picked someone, I've invested some time and money, and you know what it's like for us. We invest money, and so the sunk cost fallacy comes in. And I've sunk some costs in, but I'm beginning to suspect that my provider is not doing what they should be doing. Maybe they're blowing smoke a little bit, or their service isn't up to speed. What are those red flags that I need to watch for that are really going to bite me if I don't pay attention?
Sure. So I would say right out of the gate before you sign, if anybody comes in saying they can make you hack proof, they are absolutely lying to you 100%, and do not work with that person to save your life.
Okay.
Because there are no absolutes in cybersecurity. And I can build you a Ferrari's worth of a cyber defense strategy, and some 15-year-old kid might be able to find some way to work around it. And now the entire cybersecurity community has to slam on the brakes and figure out what on earth just happened and how do we change defense. That literally happened in the mid-2000s to Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple in a span of 2 weeks. A 15-year-old kid broke into all of them and completely rewrote the game. So first things first, there are no absolutes in technology in the sense that I can build you an excellent cyber defense strategy that makes it very, very hard to break into you. But at the end of the day, there are no guarantees. And that's just the unfortunate truth of that. I'm just being honest here. That's a red flag right out of the gate. So if somebody's saying, oh, yes, well, you'll be bulletproof. No way. The other big thing, too, is honestly, if they're failing to meet expectations right out of the gate, that's not a good sign. We literally just had one of these where we went through that vetting process, and there are things that I cannot judge because I do not have to live day to day working with this IT company. My client does. And so they're the ones judging, okay, do I like these people, or do I want to punch them every time they walk through the door? Are they not? Is this a good fit? And they had one that they thought was a good fit, had the right technology, but when they had essentially like a massive spamming attack, that company was not responsive for weeks in an effective manner, leaving them open. That, for me, is a huge red flag on, did you actually make the right choice? Should we be looking somewhere else? If you're not getting these things done in a timely manner, it's an issue. Or even basic things. I mean, understanding we've had some supply chain risks, but I had a company that couldn't get a single laptop for 2 months. That's why they came to me and said, we need to switch. So it's usually, if they're not living up to what they've promised, we'll respond within 15 minutes and it's actually 4 hours. That's a good indicator.
Let me ask another question then. At what point do I begin to build my own internal, more than just an IT department? But let's say, do you have any clients who, for instance, have an internal security expert and use your services in addition? You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to help people think about how they should be looking at it. Tell me about that.
I have several clients that have their own internal IT and cybersecurity teams. They're that big. My clients range from small to Fortune 100. I mean, I work with the United Nations. So I run the gamut here. I really do. And so I go wherever there's a need. I mean, it doesn't matter to me how big you are. If you need cybersecurity, we're here. And so I have plenty of clients that do that, and we become advisors and consultants. We're never the boots on the ground. You're never hiring me to fix your printer. I'm not taking that job, but I'm advising you on how to defend your printer, and then you're implementing it based on my design, my advice, et cetera. So where you are kind of in that mode, especially if you're in growth mode, where you're saying, should we bring on somebody in IT? It's usually, honestly, somewhere between 1 to 200 people where that need starts to become. Because as you grow to about that size, you start to realize that over about 150 people or so, you're going to need some layer of middle management, maybe more effectively. You start looking internal because you've got the resources and finances to be able to say, you know what, I can hire people that are not out generating money. I can hire internal quality control. And as soon as you start seeing that, then you start to understand that. And so at that level, you usually are not hiring like a chief information security officer because that's prohibitively expensive. But what you're doing is you're hiring basic IT that will take directions from, let's say, more experienced outside. So why would you call an IT company to like fix Word or reboot a computer or replace a mouse or something like that when you can have somebody for pretty inexpensive to do that? And the response time is instant because literally the person is in your office or works on your behalf. They've got no other job. All they're doing is focusing on your team, your people. So that is usually that balance. And at that point, it's usually a hybrid. So you've got the internal person taking care of the low-hanging fruit, and then you've got an IT company outsourced that will handle, let's say, the infrastructure and the maintenance thereof, because you're not hiring very experienced network engineers because they're expensive. But as you grow, you start to shift into that mode. And that's usually, I would say, it's give or take. I've seen companies do it at 75. I've seen companies start that road at 150 plus, but it's around there where you start to look inwards to say, we are going to start stunting our growth if we are not streamlining our internal processes, we're not showing maturity. And that just is any aspect of business, whether it's cybersecurity, risk management, or just standard operations. You need that internal maturity to really start moving to that next level.
Excellent. So just give us the quick summary. CMMC, I know we've dived into some detail a few minutes ago, but give us the quick summary of what it is, why it's important, and how to get started on that.
Yes, CMMC, again, is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification from the Department of Defense. It's essentially going to be required to go to level 2 for most organizations in construction. There are a few exceptions with possible waivers, but those are one-time things. So look at getting certified for that. It continues to keep your most favored status with your GCs, because if your competitors get it and they're a one-stop shop, you're kind of getting cut out, because by law, you're not going to be able to work on a lot of these DoD projects. This is also coming for the rest of the federal government, eventually trickling down to state and local in some form. So you've got to get down this road now. The laws or the rules are going to be online officially enforced in something like 6 to 8 months from now, as what we know. So make sure you're getting down that road. This is very important, and start now. Start register with the government in the SPRS and go down that road and start that self-assessment, and then get an overview assessment of your organization, and then start implementing and get that certification.
Excellent. Nick, please tell the audience more about yourself, what you do, and how they can contact you.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Nick Espinoza. I'm the chief security fanatic of Security Fanatics. We do all things cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, infrastructure, government compliance, all those things. On top of that, I've done 4 TED Talks, co-authored a best-selling book. I write for Forbes and Smirkanish of CNN, have a nationally syndicated radio show, and find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's either /Nick Espinoza, or Twitter is Nick AESP, or follow me on YouTube. I could use the followers there. So knock yourself out.
Excellent. We'll make sure that all those are in the show notes. Now, I'd like to end this conversation with a slight detour. You and I, just before we started, were having a parenting discussion, and you had an insight that I had never thought of. And I'd like you to share that insight with the audience in terms of a new teen driver.
Yeah, so I just, in that vein, you're talking about teenage drivers. I think one of the best things you could do if you've got like a 16-year-old or a new driver is get them a stick shift car, get them a manual. You can't sit there and mess around on your phone. You got to row to school or to work or wherever you're going, and you're connected to the car in a way that you simply aren't. And so you have to pay attention, especially as you're learning manual transmission and all of that. And so I think that is probably like the best thing that you can do.
Nick, I really appreciate that. I'd never thought of it before, and I am now going to give that some serious consideration. So thanks again for joining us on Construction Genius. And you know what? We are going to get you back on the show in the future to talk more about those security threat trends that are occurring, so that our listeners can stay on the cutting edge of what they need to do to make sure that their company is secure. So thank you for joining us here again today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to my interview with Nick. Share it with other people. Check out episode 210 for my other conversation with him. And also make sure that you check out the links in the show notes to the various places where you can learn about CMMC. Nick is a wealth of information when it comes to cybersecurity, so you should definitely check his stuff out. And please share this interview with other construction executives that you think would benefit from listening. And I'll catch you on the next episode.